Ambassador Thelvros of the unified Galactic Council strode through the gleaming obsidian corridors of the Grand Assembly Hall, his six-jointed legs clicking against the polished floor with rhythmic precision. Behind him, a retinue of lesser diplomats and security personnel struggled to match his agitated pace. "They did not respond?" he demanded, his vocal membranes vibrating with barely contained fury. "Not a single transmission?" "Nothing, Your Eminence," replied his aide, a younger Velthari named Kasavin. Her chromatophores shifted to a submissive pale blue as she delivered the news. "The Sol system has maintained complete radio silence for 73 standard rotations. Our diplomatic vessels were turned away at the heliopause by automated warning buoys." Thelvros stopped abruptly, causing several members of his entourage to nearly collide with one another. His compound eyes focused on the distant viewport, where the spiraling arms of the galaxy stretched across the void like the tendrils of some incomprehensible cosmic entity. "The humans were given explicit instructions," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "They were ordered to appear before the Council to answer for their unauthorized expansion into the Kepler territories. They were ordered to surrender their military vessels for inspection. They were ordered to submit their genetic archive for cataloging." "Perhaps they did not understand the gravity of the situation, Your Eminence," Kasavin offered weakly. "They understood perfectly." Volvros turned to face her, and she recoiled from the cold intelligence in his gaze. "The humans have been members of the galactic community for only 400 of their years. In that time, they have ignored 17 council directives, violated 43 trade agreements, and expanded their territory by 300% without authorization. And now, when summoned to answer for their crimes, they simply ignore us." "What would you have us do?" Thelvros resumed walking, his pace even more determined than before. "Convene an emergency session of the Council. If the humans will not come to us voluntarily, we will remind them why the younger races learn to fear the old." The Grand Council chamber was a masterpiece of ancient engineering, a vast spherical space carved into the heart of the station that served as the governmental hub of the unified Galactic Council. Representatives from over 8,000 species floated in their designated observation pods, each position carefully calculated to reflect the relative status and seniority of its occupant. At the very center of the sphere, bathed in the soft glow of holographic displays, sat the 7 elders, the leaders of the 7 founding races of the Council, species so ancient that their civilizations had risen and fallen before the first microbes evolved in Earth's primordial oceans. High Elder Morthax of the Crystalline Dominion spoke first, his silicon-based form refracting the ambient light into prismatic patterns. "This emergency session has been convened to address the continued non-compliance of the Terran Collective. Ambassador Thelvros, you may present the charges." Thelvros rose from his pod, his image projected across thousands of screens throughout the chamber. "Honored elders, esteemed representatives, the situation we face is unprecedented in the 12,000-year history of this council. The humans, admitted to galactic society a mere 4 centuries ago as a provisional member species, have demonstrated a pattern of defiance that threatens the very foundation of our governance." He gestured, and a holographic map of the galaxy materialized before the assembly. A small yellow star on the outer spiral arm pulsed with angry red light. "Sol system, homeworld of the Terran Collective.
For the past 200 years, we have witnessed the humans expand their territory without regard for council mandates or territorial claims of senior species. The Kepler territories, a vast swath of space near Sol Flashed, were designated as a nature preserve for the development of pre-sapient life.
The humans colonized 4 worlds within this zone, establishing industrial operations that have contaminated the evolutionary trajectory of 17 developing biospheres. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Environmental crimes were taken seriously by the Council. Furthermore, Felvros continued, our intelligence indicates that the humans have been secretly constructing military vessels in direct violation of their membership treaty. As a provisional species, they are limited to a maximum of 50 defensive frigates. Our most conservative estimates suggest they possess at least 300 warships of various classifications. The murmurs grew louder. Representative Gulketh of the martial hegemony, a warrior species that had served as the Council's military arm for millennia, rose from his pod. His massive form, covered in chitinous armor plates, cast an imposing shadow. If the humans possess such a fleet, they are in gross violation of the armament protocols. This is not merely a diplomatic matter. It is a military threat that must be addressed with force. That may indeed be necessary, Felvros agreed. But first, let us discuss the most egregious of their offenses. 73 standard rotations ago, I personally transmitted a formal summons to the Terran Collective, demanding that their leadership appear before this body to answer for their crimes. The summons was acknowledged. They confirmed receipt. He paused for effect, allowing the silence to build. And then, nothing. No response, no delegation, not even a formal refusal. They simply ignored us, as if the will of 8,000 species and the authority of the 7 elders meant nothing to them, as if we were beneath their consideration. The chamber erupted in outraged exclamations. Ignoring a formal council summons was more than an act of defiance. It was an insult to the very concept of galactic civilization. Species had been sanctioned, blockaded, and, in extreme cases, forcibly relocated to penal worlds for lesser offenses. High Elder Morthax raised one crystalline appendage, and silence fell across the chamber. The evidence is clear. The Terran Collective has shown contempt for this body and the laws that bind our civilization together. I call for a vote on the following resolution: that a military expedition be authorized to compel the humans to comply with Council authority, using whatever force is deemed necessary. The voting began, and within moments the result was displayed for all to see. 7,892 in favor, 73 opposed, 35 abstentions. The resolution is passed, Morthax declared. Representative Gulketh, you will assemble a fleet sufficient to subdue the Terran Collective and bring their leadership before this council in chains. How many vessels will you require? Gulketh consulted briefly with his military advisors before responding. If the humans possess 300 warships, as our intelligence suggests, we will dispatch 500 of our finest battlecruisers. This will provide a comfortable margin of superiority, while also sending a message about the futility of resistance. Make it so, Morthax commanded, and may this serve as a lesson to all who would defy the will of the Council. Admiral Kenji Yamamoto stood on the observation deck of the Terran defense platform Olympus, watching the endless dance of ships that filled the space around him. Earth hung in the distance, a perfect blue marble suspended in the void, as beautiful as it had appeared to his ancestors centuries ago. "Admiral, the Council fleet has crossed the Oort cloud. They'll reach the outer defense perimeter in approximately 14 hours. Yamamoto didn't turn to acknowledge his aide, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen. His eyes remained fixed on the homeworld, on the billions of lives that depended on the decisions he would make in the coming hours. "How many ships?" he asked quietly. Gulketh's eyes widened. In all his years, he had never heard a junior species speak to an elder race with such casual dismissal. "You dare?" he began, but Yamamoto continued speaking. "For 400 years, we have tolerated the Council's interference in our affairs. We have accepted the insults, the restrictions, the constant reminder that we are considered lesser beings, not worthy of respect or consideration. We have watched as our diplomats were mocked, our proposals rejected without examination, our legitimate grievances ignored. 500 battlecruisers of the Martial hegemony, sir, each one approximately 4 times the mass of our largest vessels. They're broadcasting standard military challenge protocols, demanding our immediate surrender." "And the Council?" "They've sent a formal declaration stating that we are to be forcibly brought to account for our crimes against galactic civilization. They expect us to capitulate without resistance." There was a hint of dark amusement in Chen's voice. They seemed quite confident. Yamamoto finally turned, and Chen saw the weight of centuries in his dark eyes. As one of the few humans to undergo the longevity treatments pioneered in the early days of galactic contact, Yamamoto had served the Terran military for over 200 years. He had witnessed humanity's awkward first steps into the galactic community, had watched as Earth's representatives were mocked and marginalized by elder species, had endured the endless condescension and casual racism that the Council directed toward lesser races. And he had prepared. "They expect us to capitulate," he repeated slowly. "They believe that 500 warships are sufficient to cow the entire human species into submission. Tell me, Lieutenant Commander, what does that suggest to you?" "That they have no idea what we're capable of, sir." A thin smile crossed Yamamoto's weathered face. "Precisely. For 400 years, we have been dismissed as upstarts, as primitives who somehow stumbled into space before we were ready. We have been lectured, sanctioned, and treated as children who must be taught their place in the cosmic order. And throughout it all, we have smiled and nodded and done exactly as we pleased." He walked to the main command console, pulling up a tactical display of the solar system. To the untrained eye, it showed nothing unusual: orbital stations, mining facilities, the standard infrastructure of a spacefaring civilization. "The Council believes we possess 300 warships. They believe this is an act of defiance that warrants punishment." Yamamoto's smile grew wider. "They have no idea. Initiate Protocol Eclipse. It's time to show them what 400 years of primitive engineering has produced." Admiral Gulketh stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Relentless Judgment, watching the approaching star grow larger in the view screen. The human sun, a unremarkable yellow dwarf, cast its light across the assembled might of the Martial hegemony's Second Fleet. 500 battlecruisers, 50,000 crew members, enough firepower to sterilize a planet's surface in a matter of hours. It was, by any reasonable measure, an overwhelming force. And yet, something nagged at the edges of Gulketh's consciousness. Something felt wrong. "Report on human defensive positions," he commanded. His tactical officer, a veteran of dozens of campaigns, pulled up the sensor data. "We're detecting approximately 200 human vessels arrayed in a standard defensive formation around the third planet. Their largest ships appear to be equivalent to our light cruisers in terms of mass and armament. We also detect numerous orbital stations and satellite networks, likely defensive in nature."
That's all? 200 ships?
"Yes, Admiral. Our intelligence indicated they possessed around 300 vessels, but it appears they may have overestimated their own strength. Perhaps many of their ships are non-functional, or they lack the crews to operate them." Golketh's mandibles clicked in a gesture of unease. He had fought many species in his long career, and he had learned to recognize the difference between desperation and confidence. The human formation showed no signs of panic or disorganization. They were arrayed with precise geometric efficiency, covering the obvious approach vectors, maintaining excellent spacing and fire lanes. They were waiting. "Open a channel to the human command," he ordered. "I will give them one final opportunity to surrender." The view screen flickered, and a moment later, a human face appeared. It was an older male, his dark hair streaked with gray, his features arranged in an expression of perfect calm. "I am Admiral Golketh of the Martial Hegemony, commanding the combined expeditionary force dispatched by the unified Galactic Council. You are ordered to stand down your vessels, deactivate your weapons, and prepare to be boarded. Your leadership will be taken into custody and transported to Council Station for trial. Resistance is futile and will result in the destruction of your species." The human regarded him for a long moment, and Golketh had the uncomfortable sensation that he was being evaluated, studied even. "I am Admiral Kenji Yamamoto of the Terran Defense Command," the human said. His voice was quiet, almost soft, but it carried a weight of absolute authority. "I have received your message. I have also received the Council's demands over the past several months. The Terran Collective has chosen not to respond to these communications because we find them offensive, absurd, and beneath our dignity to acknowledge." "You are a provisional species," Golketh snarled. "You exist in this galaxy because the Council permits it. Your continued survival depends on our forbearance." "Does it?" Yamamoto asked. "I wonder. Let me tell you something, Admiral. When humanity first encountered the Council, we were given a choice: submit to the authority of the elder races or face extinction. We chose, as we always have, to survive. But survival does not mean surrender. It means adaptation. It means growth. It means preparing for the day when survival on others' terms would become impossible." He paused, and there was something in his expression, a hint of satisfaction, perhaps, or anticipation. "You have brought 500 warships into our territory. You believe this is an overwhelming force. You believe we will capitulate because we have no choice. But you have made two critical errors, Admiral. First, you have underestimated humanity. And second, you have announced your intentions when you could have struck without warning." "Enough of this posturing," Golketh snapped. "You will surrender or you will die. Those are your only options." "There is a third option," Yamamoto said. "The one you have not considered. The one you cannot imagine, because you have spent too long believing in your own superiority." "And what is that?" "You will find out shortly. I advise you to order your fleet to withdraw while you still can."
Golketh barked a laugh, a harsh, clicking sound that conveyed his contempt. You are mad. You face the mightiest military force in the galaxy with 200 inferior vessels, and you speak of our withdrawal? I will enjoy watching your world burn.
The Council has made many mistakes in its dealings with humanity, Yamamoto replied. The greatest of these was failing to understand a fundamental truth about our species. We do not reveal our full strength until we are forced to use it. Goodbye, Admiral. I suspect we will not speak again. The channel closed, and Golketh was left staring at a blank screen. Admiral, his tactical officer asked, shall I order the fleet to attack formation?
Golketh hesitated for just a moment, a lifetime for a species whose survival had depended on split-second combat decisions. Something was wrong. The human's confidence was too absolute, too complete. He had shown no fear, no desperation, no attempt to negotiate for mercy. He had simply warned them.
Full attack formation, Golketh commanded, pushing his doubts aside. All weapons armed. We will show these primitives the cost of their arrogance. The first wave of Council ships crossed the outer defense perimeter exactly 14 hours and 17 minutes after entering the Sol system. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready, their shields at maximum strength. The human defenders, a mere 200 vessels arranged in a thin line between the approaching Armada and Earth, began to maneuver into intercept positions. Golketh watched the tactical display with professional appreciation. The humans were good, he had to admit that. Their formation was textbook perfect, their movements coordinated with impressive precision. But courage and skill could not overcome such overwhelming odds. Mathematics was on his side. Enemy vessels are entering weapons range in 60 seconds, his tactical officer reported. All ships report ready for combat. Excellent. On my command. Admiral, we're detecting an anomaly at coordinates 7 Mark 385. Golketh frowned. What kind of anomaly? Unknown, sir. It appears to be a localized distortion in spacetime. The readings are unlike anything in our database. Before Golketh could respond, the view screen went white. Admiral Yamamoto watched the emergence on his tactical display, his face betraying no emotion. Beside him, Lieutenant Commander Chen let out a low whistle. That never gets old, she said. From the void of space, reality itself seemed to tear open. A blazing tear of white light expanded from a single point, growing until it dominated the space between the Council fleet and the outer planets. The light was not harsh or violent. It was controlled, deliberate, almost gentle in its intensity. And from within that light, ships began to emerge. They were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Where Council vessels were sleek and organic, evolved over millennia toward an ideal of aesthetic efficiency, these ships were angular and aggressive. Their hulls were black as the void itself, broken only by the deep red glow of power systems and the cold blue of weapons arrays. They moved with the synchronized precision of a single organism, thousands of vessels acting as one. 200. 500. The Council fleet's formation faltered as sensors struggled to process what they were seeing. The anomaly continued to pulse, and more ships continued to emerge, each one sliding into its designated position with mechanical perfection. 1,000. 1,500. 2,000. And still they came. On the bridge of the relentless judgment, Admiral Golketh stood frozen,
his compound eyes unable to process the impossibility unfolding before him.
That's not possible, his tactical officer whispered. Our intelligence said 300 maximum. The emergence finally ceased, and for a long moment, the cosmos held its breath. Between the Council fleet and the distant blue marble of Earth, an armada of exactly 2,000 human warships hung in the void. Each vessel was at least twice the size of Golkith's battlecruisers. Each bristled with weapons of unknown configuration. Each radiated power signatures that dwarfed anything in the Council database.
"Where did they come from?" Golkith demanded. "Where were they hiding?" "We don't know, Admiral. The energy signatures suggest they emerged from some kind of dimensional fold. But the technology required for such a transit is theoretical at best. No species in the Council possesses." "The humans are primitives," Golkith roared. "They have been civilized for less than 1,000 years. They cannot possess technology that the elder races have never developed."
"And yet," said a voice, "here we are."
Golkith spun to face the viewscreen, where Admiral Yamamoto's face had reappeared. The human's expression had not changed, that same calm, patient, almost sorrowful look. "You asked where they came from," Yamamoto continued. "The answer is complicated, but the simple version is this. For the past 300 years, we have been building our true fleet in the space between dimensions. It was the only place we could work without the Council's surveillance satellites detecting our activities." "The space between dimensions?" Golkith repeated. "That is impossible. No species can navigate the void outside normal reality." "No species in the Council can," Yamamoto corrected. "But humanity has always been good at finding solutions to impossible problems. It took us 50 years to develop the technology, another 50 to stabilize it, and 200 more to build what you see before you. 2,000 capital ships, each one representing the combined military output of an entire star system. Each one crewed by officers who have trained for decades in preparation for this moment. You planned this. From the beginning, you planned this. We hoped it would never be necessary. We tried to work within the Council's system to earn respect and equal treatment. But your people made it clear that humanity would never be anything more than a convenient scapegoat, a species to be blamed when things went wrong and ignored when things went right. So yes, we prepared for the day when words would no longer suffice." Golkith's mind raced, processing the tactical implications. 500 ships against 2,000. Outdated vessels against unknown technology. A punitive expedition against a prepared defense. "This changes nothing," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "The Council will not tolerate this defiance. Even if you defeat us today, they will send more ships. 1,000, 10,000. They will never stop until humanity is broken." "Perhaps," Yamamoto acknowledged. "But consider this. The fleet you see represents only what we were willing to reveal. If humanity has been preparing for 300 years in secret, how many other surprises do you imagine we have in reserve?" He let the question hang in the air. "You have two choices, Admiral. You can order your fleet to engage, and we will destroy you. Every ship, every crew member, every weapon system. We will leave nothing behind but debris and a warning to those who would follow. Or you can withdraw, return to Council Station, tell them what you have witnessed. Let them decide whether humanity is worth the cost of a real war." "You would let us go?" We are not monsters, Admiral. We do not seek destruction for its own sake. All we have ever wanted is to be left alone, to chart our own course among the stars without the Council's interference. Give us that, and we have no quarrel with you."
Golketh stared at the human, searching for deception, for weakness, for any sign that this was a bluff. He found nothing but absolute sincerity.
"And if the Council refuses? If they choose war?"
Yamamoto's expression finally changed. A deep sadness settled over his features, the look of a man contemplating an outcome he had hoped to avoid.
"Then we will give them a war they will never forget. And when it is over, there will be a new order in this galaxy, one where humanity is no longer required to beg for the right to exist."
The channel remained open, but neither spoke. Around them, two fleets hung motionless in space, separated by nothing more than the decision of a single being.
The minutes stretched into an eternity. Admiral Golketh stood at the center of his bridge, surrounded by officers who looked to him for guidance. For the first time in his long military career, he did not know what to do.
"Admiral," his first officer said quietly, "our weapons are charged. Our warriors are ready. We could strike now, before they expect it."
"You saw what they emerged from," Golketh replied. "Technology that allows them to hide entire fleets in dimensions we cannot detect or reach. Do you truly believe they do not have weapons of equal sophistication?"
We are the martial hegemony. We have never retreated from battle.
"No, and that pride has served us well for 10,000 years. But pride is not strategy, Commander. Look at the tactical display. Look at what we face." The display showed the human armada in perfect formation, each vessel precisely positioned to maximize its fire coverage while minimizing its exposure. It was a defensive stance, not an aggressive one, but the sheer scale of it was breathtaking. 2,000 ships, each one more than capable of destroying multiple Council vessels in single combat.
And behind them, the thin line of 200 smaller human ships that Golketh had originally dismissed as their entire navy. He understood now, those ships were not defenders. They were a decoy, a distraction, a deliberate deception designed to draw the Council fleet into the trap. Everything the humans had done, every violation of Council law, every ignored directive, every act of apparent defiance had been calculated. They had wanted to appear weak. They had wanted to be underestimated. They had deliberately baited the Council into sending a fleet, knowing exactly how it would respond to their provocations. And Golketh had walked right into their trap. "Open a channel to the human flagship," he ordered.
Admiral Yamamoto received the communication in silence. On the tactical display, he could see the Council fleet beginning to adjust its formation, not for attack, but for withdrawal.
"Admiral Yamamoto," Golketh's voice was heavy with reluctant respect. "I have served the martial hegemony for 500 years. I have fought in 73 campaigns against 32 species. I have never been outmaneuvered so completely."
"I take no pleasure in it, Admiral. Had the Council treated us with fairness and respect, none of this would have been necessary."
"Perhaps, but the Council has existed for 12,000 years. Its ways are not easily changed."
"Then perhaps it is time for new ways."
Golketh was silent for a long moment. "I will withdraw my fleet. I will report what I have witnessed to the Council. But I cannot guarantee how they will respond."
"I understand.
That is why I am going to give you something to deliver to them. Something that might help them understand exactly where they stand."
Yamamoto nodded to Chen, who transmitted a data package to the Council flagship. Golkith's tactical officer reviewed the contents and went pale beneath his chitinous plates.
"Admiral, these are technical specifications for their weapons, their shields, their engines, if this data is accurate." Golkith reviewed the specifications himself, and for the first time in centuries, he felt genuine fear. The human weapons operated on principles that Council science had never imagined. Their shields were not barriers, but probability fields, quantum effects that could selectively negate incoming attacks while allowing their own fire to pass through unimpeded. Their engines bent space-time in ways that made conventional faster-than-light travel look like a child's toy. And their power sources. Golkith did not fully understand the physics involved, but he understood enough to recognize that each human capital ship carried more energy than the Martial hegemony's entire fleet combined.
"Why are you giving us this?" he asked Yamamoto. "Because I want the Council to understand that we are not bluffing. We are not posturing. We could destroy your fleet in minutes, and there is nothing you could do to stop us. But we choose not to, because destruction serves no one's interests. Let the Council study these specifications. Let their scientists confirm that what I tell you is true. And then let them decide whether they wish to continue treating humanity as a lesser species to be commanded and controlled."
Golkith nodded slowly. "You are gambling that the Council will choose wisdom over pride."
"I am gambling that they will choose survival over extinction. It is a distinction that has guided human policy for a very long time."
The Council fleet began its withdrawal 3 hours later. 500 battlecruisers turned their backs on the human Armada and began the long journey home. Behind them, 2,000 human warships held their positions in perfect silence, watching, waiting.
Admiral Yamamoto watched them go.
"Sir," Chen said quietly, "do you think they'll listen?"
Yamamoto considered the question for a long time. The Council has existed for 12,000 years. In that time, they have absorbed or destroyed every species that challenged their authority. They have never encountered a power they could not overcome, never faced a threat they could not neutralize. Their entire worldview is built on the assumption of their own invincibility.
And we just shattered that assumption.
Yes. The question is how they will respond. Some will argue for accommodation, for negotiation, for accepting humanity as an equal partner in galactic affairs. Others will see our power as a threat that must be eliminated at any cost, even if that cost is the destruction of their own civilization. Which side will win? Yamamoto turned away from the view screen, his eyes distant. That depends on whether they are more afraid of us than they are of change. In my experience, fear of the unknown is the most powerful force in the universe.
But you gave them a chance. You let them retreat.
I did, because the alternative was genocide, and humanity has never been comfortable with that path. We could destroy the Council, scatter their fleets, occupy their worlds, but what would that gain us? A galaxy full of enemies, an empire built on fear and resentment. We would become exactly what we have always fought against.
Chen nodded slowly. So, we wait. We wait, and we prepare, and we hope that somewhere in that ancient bureaucracy there are beings wise enough to recognize that the universe is changing, whether they approve or not.
The return of the expeditionary fleet sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council.
For the first time in millennia, a military force dispatched by the Council had retreated without engaging its target. For the first time in recorded history, a junior species had forced an elder race to back down through sheer strength of arms. Emergency sessions were called. Intelligence reports were analyzed and reanalyzed. The technical specifications provided by the humans were studied by the finest scientific minds in the galaxy, and the conclusions were unanimous. Humanity possessed military technology at least 300 years more advanced than anything in the Council arsenal. How this was possible became the subject of fierce debate. Some argued that the humans must have discovered an ancient cache of technology, perhaps left behind by a precursor civilization. Others suggested that the specifications were fabricated, an elaborate deception designed to intimidate the Council into submission. But the Martial hegemony's own scientists, analyzing the data alongside recorded sensor readings from the confrontation, confirmed the terrible truth. The human technology was genuine, and the humans had built it themselves. High Elder Morthax convened a special session of the Seven Elders, the first such gathering in over 1,000 years. "We face a crisis of unprecedented magnitude," he began. "A species that we admitted to the Council as a provisional member, a species that we considered barely civilized, has somehow developed military capabilities that exceed our own by an order of magnitude. We must decide how to respond." Elder Zethrios of the Collective Mind, representing a hive species that had achieved interstellar travel while mammals still climbed trees on Earth, spoke next. "The evidence is clear. The humans have deceived us from the beginning. They pretended to be weak while they built their power in secret. This is not the behavior of a species that seeks peaceful coexistence. It is the behavior of a predator waiting to strike." "Or the behavior of a species that felt threatened," said Elder Yeltha of the Verdant Synthesis, a plant-based consciousness that had always advocated for diplomatic solutions. "Let us not forget that we gave the humans ample reason to fear us. We restricted their expansion. We demanded their genetic archives. We treated them as children to be disciplined rather than equals to be respected." "They are not our equals," Zethrios replied. "They have existed as a spacefaring species for less than 500 years. We have built civilizations that lasted for millennia." "And yet their technology surpasses ours," Yeltha countered. "Perhaps longevity is not the only measure of advancement." The debate raged for hours, then days, then weeks. Faction leaders emerged, alliances formed and dissolved, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. On one side stood the supremacist faction, led by the Martial hegemony and supported by dozens of species that had spent centuries maintaining their positions in the Council hierarchy. They argued that human power must be broken before it grew too great, that the Council must assemble a fleet of unprecedented size and strike at Earth before humanity could expand further. "We cannot allow a precedent to stand," Admiral Golketh argued before the full Council. "If we show weakness now, every minor species in the galaxy will be emboldened to challenge our authority. The Council's power has always rested on the assumption that defiance is futile. The humans have proven that defiance is possible. We must prove that it is still fatal." On the other side stood the reformist faction, led by species like the Verdant Synthesis, who had long chafed under the Council's rigid hierarchy. They argued that the emergence of human power was an opportunity, not a threat, a chance to restructure galactic governance along more equitable lines. "We have grown complacent in our power," Elder Yeltha declared.
We have assumed that our technology, our numbers, our ancient civilizations made us invulnerable. The humans have shown us that innovation matters more than age, that determination matters more than tradition. Perhaps it is time to listen to what they have to say.
Between these extremes, the majority of council species wavered, uncertain which path to follow.
And on Earth, humanity watched and waited.
Admiral Yamamoto received weekly reports on the Council's deliberations, courtesy of the extensive intelligence network that humanity had spent centuries developing. He read each report with careful attention, looking for signs that might indicate which direction the Council would ultimately choose.
The supremacist faction is gaining ground, he told his senior staff during one of their regular briefings. The martial hegemony has called in favors from half the species in the Council. They're assembling a coalition for war.
"How large a force are we looking at?" asked General Marcus Webb, commander of Earth's ground forces.
Preliminary estimates suggest they're planning to mobilize between 3,000 and 5,000 capital ships, with support vessels and troop transports pushing the total well over 10,000. That's a significant escalation. Yes, but not unexpected. The Council cannot afford to appear weak. If they accept our challenge without response, their authority over the galaxy collapses. Can we defeat that kind of force? Yamamoto was silent for a moment, considering the question carefully. We can. Our technological advantage is substantial, and we have capabilities they haven't even imagined yet. But victory would come at a terrible cost. Millions of lives, possibly billions. And even if we won, what then? We would have made permanent enemies of thousands of species. The galaxy would be divided between those who support us and those who fear us, and that division would lead to centuries of conflict. Then what's the alternative? We need to change the game. Force the Council to see us as something other than a threat to be neutralized. Give them a reason to choose negotiation over war. How do we do that? Yamamoto pulled up a holographic display showing the galactic map. We've spent 400 years pretending to be weaker than we are. It's time to show them exactly how strong we've become, not through violence, but through demonstration. We're going to invite the Council to send observers to Sol System. We're going to show them our industrial capacity, our research facilities, our military infrastructure. We're going to be completely transparent about our capabilities. Sir, that seems counterintuitive. Won't that just frighten them more? Perhaps, but fear of the unknown is different from fear of the known. Right now, they're imagining worst-case scenarios. Human fleets appearing from nowhere to destroy their homeworlds, human agents infiltrating their governments, human weapons capable of sterilizing entire star systems. The reality, while impressive, is not quite so apocalyptic. We have power, yes, but we also have limits. We're not gods, we're just very well-prepared humans. And you think showing them that will make them less likely to attack? I think it will make them realize that we're not interested in conquest. If we wanted to destroy them, we would have done so already. The fact that we're offering transparency instead of annihilation should send a clear message about our intentions. General Webb nodded slowly. It's a risk. But I suppose everything is at this point. The invitation was transmitted to every species in the Galactic Council. Send observers to Sol System for a complete demonstration of human capabilities. No restrictions, no limitations, no areas off limits. Ask any question, examine any technology, speak to any citizen. Humanity had nothing to hide and nothing to fear. The response was overwhelming.
Over 2,000 delegations accepted the invitation, ranging from single representatives of minor species to massive diplomatic missions from the Council's most powerful members. They arrived in Sol System expecting to find a military fortress, a civilization obsessed with war and conquest.
What they found was something entirely different. Ambassador Kethvar of the Analytical Consortium, a species known for their obsessive attention to data and their emotionless approach to decision-making, arrived on the human space station designated Unity, expecting to conduct a thorough examination of military systems. He was instead greeted by a young human woman wearing civilian clothes and a friendly smile. "Welcome to Sol System, Ambassador. I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, and I'll be your guide during your stay. Where would you like to begin?"
Kethvar consulted his data tablet. "I wish to examine your military production facilities, specifically the manufacturing plants where your warships are constructed." "Of course. We've scheduled a tour of the Titan shipyards for this afternoon. In the meantime, may I suggest breakfast? We've prepared a selection of foods designed to be compatible with your species' digestive system." Kethvar blinked. "Breakfast?"
Yes, we understand that interstellar travel can be exhausting, and our research suggests that analytical consortium members perform optimal cognitive functions when adequately nourished. We want you to see everything clearly, without the distraction of hunger.
It was, perhaps, the strangest thing anyone had ever said to Kethvar. Military demonstrations did not normally include meals. "Very well," he said, uncertain how else to respond. The breakfast was excellent. The food had been precisely calibrated to match consortium preferences, seasoned with nutrients that enhanced mental clarity. Kethvar found himself eating more than he had intended, and enjoying the experience more than he would have thought possible. The tour of the Titan shipyards was equally surprising. Kethvar had expected to see vast military installations, weapons of mass destruction lined up in endless rows, an industrial complex dedicated entirely to the production of death. What he found instead was a facility dedicated to multiple purposes. "Approximately 60% of our shipyard capacity is currently devoted to civilian construction," Dr. Vasquez explained as they walked through the massive orbital complex. "Colony ships, cargo transports, research vessels. Military production represents a significant but minority portion of our total output."
"But you possess 2,000 warships," Kethvar observed. "That required substantial investment."
It did, but our economy is much larger than the Council realizes. We have expanded into territories that the Council declared off-limits, yes, but we have developed those territories far more extensively than anyone imagined. At last count, humanity occupies 47 star systems with a combined population of over 60 billion. Kethvar stopped walking. 60 billion? Our estimates suggested 12 billion at most. Yes, your intelligence gathering has been somewhat inadequate. We've taken great care to obscure the true extent of our civilization. Why? Because we knew this day would come. We knew the Council would eventually try to force us into compliance, and we wanted to be prepared when they did. If they had known our true strength, they might have acted earlier, before we were ready to defend ourselves. Kethvar processed this information, his analytical mind working through the implications. You have been planning this confrontation for centuries. Not a confrontation, a reckoning. We did not seek conflict with the Council, but we were not willing to accept permanent subservience either. We built our power in secret because the Council left us no other choice. Reveal our strength, and they would crush us before we could become a threat. Hide our weakness, and they would exploit us indefinitely. The only option was to hide our strength until it was too great to be crushed. And now? Now, we hope that the Council will recognize the new reality and adjust accordingly. We do not wish to rule the galaxy. We do not wish to dominate other species. We simply wish to be treated as equals, with the same rights and privileges as any other civilization.
That is surprisingly reasonable.
Dr. Vasquez smiled. Humans are often more reasonable than we appear. We have a gift for dramatic gestures, yes, but beneath the drama, we are usually pursuing quite practical goals. The display you witnessed when our fleet emerged, that was theater, designed to make an impression. The reality behind it is much more mundane. We just want to live our lives without interference. Over the following weeks, Ambassador Kethvar and his counterparts from 1,000 other species witnessed the full scope of human civilization. They toured agricultural stations producing food for billions. They visited universities where human scientists pursued research in fields that council academies had never imagined. They met ordinary human citizens, spoke to them about their lives and dreams, and discovered, to their considerable surprise, that humans were not the aggressive warmongers that council propaganda had portrayed. They were people. Strange people, certainly, with unusual customs and a sometimes baffling approach to problem-solving. But fundamentally, they were not so different from any other species striving to find their place in the universe. When the delegations finally returned to council space, they carried a new perspective with them. The humans were not a threat to be eliminated. They were a power to be respected, certainly, but also a potential partner in the ongoing project of galactic civilization. The final vote came 3 months after the delegations returned. The council chamber was filled to capacity. Every representative pod occupied by beings who understood that their vote would shape the future of the galaxy. High Elder Morthax called the session to order. We have heard the arguments of both factions. We have reviewed the intelligence from our observers. We have considered the implications of each possible course of action. Now we must decide. Shall the Council pursue military action against the Terran Collective? Or shall we seek a diplomatic resolution that recognizes humanity as a full and equal member of our civilization? Admiral Golketh rose to speak for the supremacist faction one final time. We have been shown the full extent of human power. We have seen their ships, their weapons, their industrial capacity. And I will tell you now, we cannot defeat them. Not as we are. Perhaps not ever. But that does not mean we should accept their terms. They have built their civilization on deception and secrecy. They have violated our laws and mocked our authority. If we reward such behavior with recognition and equality, we invite every minor species in the galaxy to do the same. Elder Yeltha of the Verdant Synthesis responded, "And if we pursue war, we invite our own destruction. The humans have made clear that they will defend themselves. They have shown us technology that exceeds our own by centuries. Even if we mobilized every warship in Council space, the outcome would be uncertain at best and catastrophic at worst. Is our pride worth the lives of trillions?" The debate continued, but it was clear that the weight of evidence had shifted the balance. Species after species rose to endorse the diplomatic approach, citing the observations of their delegates, the reasonable demeanor of the human representatives, the practical impossibility of military victory. When the final vote was tallied, the result was decisive. 6,147 in favor of diplomatic recognition, 1,853 opposed, with the remainder abstaining. Humanity would be admitted to the Galactic Council as a full member, with all the rights and privileges that entailed. The violations of the past 4 centuries would be forgiven. A new treaty would be negotiated, establishing the terms of humanity's integration into galactic civilization. The signing ceremony took place on neutral ground, a space station in an uninhabited system precisely equidistant from Sol and Council Station. Representatives from all 8,000 Council species attended, along with a human delegation led by President Anna Kowalski of the Terran Collective. Admiral Yamamoto stood behind the President as she affixed humanity's seal to the treaty, his face unreadable. For 300 years, he had prepared for this moment, not just the military preparations, but the diplomatic groundwork, the intelligence operations, the careful cultivation of sympathetic factions within the Council. Everything had led to this. And yet, he felt no triumph, only relief and a bone-deep exhaustion that centuries of service had carved into his soul. "You don't look happy," President Kowalski observed quietly as the ceremony continued around them. "I'm not unhappy," Yamamoto replied, "but I know this is not the end. It's barely the beginning." "You think they'll try to undermine us?" "Some of them, certainly. The supremacist faction lost today, but they haven't disappeared. They'll work behind the scenes, looking for opportunities to restore their dominance. And there are thousands of species who voted for peace today who may feel differently tomorrow when the immediate crisis has passed and old resentments resurface." "So what do we do?" "What we've always done. We prepare, we build, we adapt, and we hope that the better angels of sentient nature will prevail." President Kowalski smiled. "That sounds like something a human would say." "I've had plenty of practice." Epilogue. 1 century later. The galaxy had changed in ways that would have seemed impossible to the beings who had witnessed humanity's dramatic emergence 100 years earlier. The rigid hierarchy that had defined the Galactic Council for millennia had gradually given way to a more flexible structure, one that recognized the contributions of all species, regardless of their age or the size of their fleets. Human innovation had sparked a technological renaissance, as ideas that had been dismissed as impossible by the elder races proved not only possible but practical. Dimensional transit, the technology that had allowed humanity to build its secret fleet, was now available to all Council members, opening vast new territories for exploration and colonization. Medical advances pioneered by human researchers had extended the lifespans of species across the galaxy. Cultural exchange had broken down barriers that had existed for thousands of years, as beings from every corner of the cosmos discovered that they had more in common than they had ever imagined. There were still conflicts, of course. The universe was too large and too complex for perfect harmony. But the conflicts were managed through negotiation rather than war, through compromise rather than conquest. The threat of mutual destruction that humanity had demonstrated so dramatically had paradoxically created the foundation for lasting peace. Admiral Yamamoto, now over 400 years old and long since retired from active service, spent his final years on a quiet farm in the mountains of Japan. He had seen enough of space, he told the occasional visitor. He wanted to spend whatever time remained to him watching the seasons change and the crops grow. One day, a delegation arrived from the Council, representatives of species that had once voted to destroy humanity, now come to pay their respects to the man who had played such a crucial role in shaping galactic history.
"We wanted to thank you," said the martial hegemony's current supreme commander, a being who had not even been born when Golkith's fleet retreated from Sol. "Our peoples were enemies once. You could have destroyed us. Instead, you gave us a chance to become something better." Yamamoto received them graciously,
offered them tea, and listened to their expressions of gratitude. When they had finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I never hated the Council," he said finally. "I never hated any of the species that tried to keep humanity in its place. I understood them. They were afraid, and fear makes beings do terrible things. When we revealed our fleet, when we demonstrated our power, I could have used that fear to justify any action. I could have demanded reparations, extracted concessions, built an empire on the ashes of the old order. Why didn't you? Because empires built on fear never last. Sooner or later, the fear fades, and all that's left is resentment. I wanted humanity's place in the galaxy to be built on something more durable than the threat of force. I wanted it to be built on respect, on shared interests, on the recognition that we are all just travelers on the same cosmic journey." "And do you think you succeeded?" Yamamoto looked out the window at the mountains that had surrounded his family's home for generations. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded him of the colors he had seen in 1,000 alien atmospheres. "I think we gave the galaxy a chance," he said. "That's all anyone can do. Give the universe a chance to be better than it was. Whether it takes that chance, that's not up to us. That's up to the beings who come after, who inherit the world we've built, and decide what to do with it." The delegation departed the next morning, carrying with them the words of a man who had changed the course of history through strength and restraint, through power and wisdom. They would share those words with their peoples, and the peoples of 1,000 other worlds, and perhaps, just perhaps, those words would continue to shape the future long after the man who spoke them had passed into memory. On the anniversary of the first emergence, as it came to be known, ceremonies were held across the galaxy. Ships of every species gathered at the coordinates where humanity's Armada had first appeared, now marked by a massive monument, a structure that could be seen from light years away, a beacon of remembrance and hope. The inscription on the monument, translated into every language in the galaxy, read, "Here, humanity emerged from silence, not to conquer, but to claim their place among the stars, not to destroy, but to demonstrate that power and wisdom can coexist. May all who pass remember that the greatest victories are won not through the destruction of enemies, but through the transformation of fear into understanding." And below, in smaller text, a quote attributed to Admiral Kenji Yamamoto. "We did not ask for your permission. We did not accept your judgment. But we never forgot that we are all children of the same cosmos. When you gave us the chance to be your equals, we took it. When you gave us the chance to be your enemies, we refused. That is what it means to be human." The galaxy read those words and remembered. And in the remembering, they understood something that had taken humanity centuries to learn, and the Council millennia to accept. That true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to choose otherwise.